What's up, everyone? This is the Go Long Podcast. We are live again at Fatty Beer Company, Orchard Park, New York, where we hope to see you Wednesday night. We're going to have a pre-draft extravaganza, Jim. So we've done different iterations of the extravaganza. I hope people out there remember the first one, the first annual, if you can call it that, was on Zoom. We had about 25, 30 subscribers in there, and it didn't make the stream. It didn't make the Apple, Spotify, or GoLongTV.com after the fact. Because things were said, Jim, you had a few pops in you, and you let loose on some stories that, I mean, who knows? Maybe they'll see the light of day on the podcast now. Maybe time has passed. Statute of limitations on some of these stories.
Right. So that was when I still think – I was thinking about working in the NFL, and that was why you said it's probably a good idea if we cut some of this and edit or not post, and it will just make it for it. If you were there, you remember.
You're right. If you know, you know.
That was the Justin Fields draft.
It was the Justin Fields draft.
Oh yeah.
Some thoughts on I don't. Well, I'll let you organically bring up the stories. I'll let you organically.
We can let it die. Let it die. It's like trying to make another sequel. You can't recreate it.
Well, how about this? How about this for a sales job? If you come Wednesday.
But this is new because we haven't done one like this.
Exactly. Yeah. And then, so last year would have been our second year. Right. I think we did like just a normal podcast.
Yeah, we did. That's what I'm saying. We haven't been out and just talk football, analyze the picks live, tell stories will be told.
And I think it's good to do it the night before the draft. So Wednesday, the 26th. 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, just come on down here to Fatty Beer. We were just hanging out with Chris DeCesare, Nick Fatty. They run the show. Yes. Great dudes. They'll be around. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you said it again tonight. You're going to buy everyone's first round?
First round again. We'll have the tab going. Right. Things are good. Florida Atlantic was still – we like Florida Atlantic on this podcast. Good tournament run, so let's enjoy it, have some fun. And it's restaurant week. Chris wanted us to talk about.
Hell yeah. It's restaurant week. So
go to Fatty's site.
Get on into Fatty. $25 gets you a hell of a lot. So
the sandwiches, the beers, all the fatty.
Yeah, those fatty patties.
I mean, it's just part of it.
The Nick Filet, one could say, hits the spot. And I'm drinking – I'm going sour because we had some good weather. 48 hours ago it was 85 degrees. Now it's, 35 degrees, and that's really not an exaggeration. So – I'm still in 85-degree mode, drinking a Warhead beer. I didn't even know they made Warhead beers, but it's pretty good.
Name is strong.
Cheers, Jim.
Cheers.
So today, all right, we're trying to figure out what we want to get into. We had a heated discussion, debate. We have to disagree more on this podcast. We really do.
It sparked some good debates.
Well, you're too nice of a guy. So if I say something that pisses you off, Jim, or is off base, I want you to give me the business. Check me into the boards. Come on, let's drop the gloves once in a while. That's what sells.
What the debate was you feel like somebody should take a chance on Anthony Richardson.
I do.
Yeah, and my thing is, I'm like, hell no. But other than that, you could be right. I mean, I've been in that position where I've said hell no before and was wrong. It happens. You miss picks.
Do you want to say when?
Oh. I mean, we hit on a lot of picks too, but you do miss on picks. Okay. That's why, I'm not afraid to be wrong.
You aren't. You're just honest.
And you're saying
you're honest, Dave.
Yeah, just come out with and say, I don't see it. It wouldn't be for me. I don't know if it's my maturity now as a NFL, over the years where I always think back on that. If I was a young scout, would I have been like, Anthony Richardson, he'll change the game. You'll never see anything like it. Then you're in a position like, I was in Buffalo when you are making the decisions. Man, those headache or those projections and those, it's going to get better. It can improve. It can do this. It can do that. It's okay. Even though he's never done anything in college, it's okay. Not for me anymore. Like I said, I don't know if it's my age now, but hey, let somebody else be the hero on that one.
So you're telling me that in that draft room, there are coaches, scouts, personnel men who like to, throw their proverbial stones onto the table and say, here's where I stand.
You always have to.
Ego in pro football? Who would have thought?
Yeah, right. It starts with scouts. Every scout's going to do it. Every director is going to do it. GM, everybody's going to have. By the time the draft comes around, when every guy gets picked, everybody can look around the room and say, "Ooh, that was your guy."
Yeah.
Oh, you didn't like him. Everybody is getting.
That's important, though.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like, there needs to be accountability.
Oh.
Like, I give the scouts who stand for a guy, I give them all the credit in the world.
Tyler.
Instead of those who hedge and, are rewriting history after the fact.
Listen, you can grade every player as a scout in the third and fourth round and hedge your way through life right on that fence.
Yeah.
Not make any kind of, what I mean? Coaches used to always joke. Joe Vitt for the Saints would always say, yeah, great. You guys are like, oh, yeah, third, fourth round, he just needs a little coaching. Like he's going to get there. He just needs a little coaching. And the coach is like, yeah, how about the guy that is ready to play? That's always the debate with coaches and scouts.
I mean, you scouted Jimmy Graham down there in the Southeast where Sean Payton and the Saints and you drafted Jimmy Graham one round before everybody else. I mean, Bill Parcells wanted him in Miami. Bill Belichick probably would have taken him in New England the same year they took Rob Gronkowski instead of Aaron Hernandez. The Ravens. Jimmy told me he thought he was going to the Ravens. They gave him the playbook. Who was the coordinator? Cam Cameron. So he put him through a workout, and it was such a hard workout. Cam Cameron broke his leg. He suffered this really bad injury, and Jimmy's like, I'm going there. They gave me the playbook. I know their offense. They were sure they were going to get him, and it took the Saints. You doing the work on the ground. You're the area scout that you're there watching Jimmy Graham, the 1 year of college football he played after this basketball career, and then Sean Payton to say, no, we're going to take him to the third. We're not going to wait to the fourth.
I mean, and that was Coach Sean Payton could do that. He did it with Mark Ingram. I mean, we took Cam Jordan. As scouts, we thought the day was over in New Orleans. And then all of a sudden, sitting there and here's what you do as an area scout. You're sitting back and you see the decision makers at the table. All of a sudden the phones start picking up. Hey, can you call that? Do you call it? So all of a sudden everybody that has a connection on the teams before you, everybody starts calling and you're like, oh, here we go. The decision makers came back in the room and it was for Mark Ingram, but I was the area scout for Mark Ingram for the Saints. And he was not that was some big find or anything. It was more that, it's always fun when it's from your area and you were excited about that they agreed that he was worthy of that. So
it's exciting.
Those are fun. Those are the fun stories. Now I will tell you where really good content would have been filmed are after the drafts. We would sit around in those draft rooms as scouts and you have every team's draft right there, the magnets under every team. And you go through it. Like everybody's calling everybody out. Oh, are you surprised they took him? Oh, I don't know what they were thinking. Like at the end of the day, you have it for that night, and then you never really revisit that conversation to see who really was right or wrong. We were probably, the guys criticizing everything, and everybody's draft was not good. Your draft was great. I mean, it's classic. But
I remember when I was working on that series on the New York Giants under Dave Gettleman, and the ship basically, crashing into an iceberg.
Oh, yeah.
Got it 1 year ago. But there was one source who told me, there's somebody who's still there. He's not there anymore. There's somebody who's still there who I wouldn't be surprised if he went back and, scrubbed some of the grades on his prospects. It's like, is that even possible? Like, can a guy go back in the system and be like, actually, I didn't like this guy, or actually I did like that guy, kind of rewrite history, like internally in the system of a team?
I think over time that has changed. But, yeah, I do think there were times when certain people could go back and change.
Survival. It's about survival and trying to justify your existence.
No question. It's just like winning the press conference, winning draft day grades. That's winning a press conference. Means zero.
Yeah.
Zero. It's just like the head coach is going to blitz more than the last coach. It's going to be more aggressive than the last coach. This draft we always talk about it. It's the cliches, but zero.
I can remember Johnny Manziel at the NFL Combine. So that would have been 2014. And that was –
Talk about Whaley and I were at his pro day. George Bush, the former president, was there.
Really?
Yes.
W was there.
It was unbelievable.
I don't even remember that.
Mike Evans.
I mean, his combine interview was a spectacle. Like they're always so when it was I liked it when it was at the stadium at Lucas Oil. So, all the reporters, all the prospects were kind of jammed in a more like compact space, and there'd be a prospect who comes out to a podium and you just kind of knew this dude is going to draw everybody. Everybody's going to fight for the elbow room, try to get a question in. And Johnny Manziel, he owned that press conference. Go back and watch it. It's got to be out there. I mean, it was so clean, so decisive, precise. He sounded contrite, like he owned up to the errors in his past and his lifestyle. And I think everybody walked away in the media like, wow, that was impressive. Like, this is somebody who gets it. He didn't get it. He didn't change. No. If anything, it was 100 times worse in the NFL. And he probably wasn't that good anyways, but he didn't help himself.
I can tell you, this is where area scouts weren't good. There could not have been. I can tell you this: the area scouts in Buffalo. I'll just speak for our area scouts. When I was, no, they were like, he won't change. He isn't good. They didn't like his talent. They didn't like his character. He was not even a thought for us. So we were there.
Good on your area scouts.
They were great. We were tied in. We had good area scouts.
Do you remember who that was?
Yeah, like it was guys like Sean Heinlein, Matt Hand. They're still scouting. I don't know if Matt's in the NFL. I think Matt's back. I think he's back in the NFL. Okay. Sean was back in Philly. I'm not sure. He's in Cleveland now, I think. But anyway, yeah, good scouts, good guys, all that stuff. But yeah, the Manziel side. We were there for Mike Evans to see, because he's everything. I mean, he was everything you wanted.
Right. That was the real story out of that Texas A&M Alabama game. It wasn't Manziel creating magic.
Jump balls.
It was Mike Evans
still doing it.
Still doing it.
I wonder how much Tom Brady loves him. To have a receiver that big, that plays big and plays big. You always have to we always say that. Like, don't just be big and play big.
Yeah.
He did all that. Just like his pre-draft brawl he had on South Beach after he was at dinner here with us at downtown at Buffalo Chop House. Oh yeah, you could look that one up. But he jumped over a car. Almost got in a fight with our receivers coach Rob Moore. They were arguing at dinner. We talked about it at Chop House.
It's been a while since we talked about it.
Yeah, those were the stories these are the pre-draft.
Buffalo
Chop House. Rob Moore's trying to, give Mike Evans some advice on, relationships as you become an NFL receiver and what's going to happen in your life. And they just had some disagreements on things and got a little heated. Jerick McKinnon, Georgia Southern, we were across the table sitting. He was saying that he was on the visit as well. Couldn't have been more calm. He handled it great. We just kept talking. He was great. We're like, yeah, they're arguing, whatever. They were arguing like they knew each other like brothers.
And was that the first time that they had actually met too?
Those are
awesome.
supposed to be when the players and coaches are getting to know each other and impress each other. And Rob, they were having. When I say it wasn't like nothing was going to happen, but they were definitely disagreeing.
I do like the.
But those visits were always. I told you those were always really helpful.
The willingness, though, of Mike Evans to be that comfortable in himself.
He was
to stand up for what he believes in,
and that's why.
He's not there to kiss ass. He's not there to tell you what you want to hear.
No, and then it was I think it was like a week or two later, he got, it comes out, he was in some fight in South Beach, and we're like, yeah, didn't care.
Yeah.
Didn't you know what I mean? Who cares?
I mean, everything comes back to Seinfeld, but it just reminds me of the George Costanza when he was interviewing for the Yankees.
Yes.
And he tells Steinbrenner.
And just told him everything, laid it right out.
And he's ran the franchise into the ground. He's made it a disgrace. And he's like, "You're hired." I love it. Opposite George.
And it changed everything.
What was the that you can say, maybe you don't want to say, like the best and the worst first impressions with a draft prospect? Whether it's that 15-minute speech at the combine.
Worst I know.
Can we?
Joe Mixon, Buffalo Bills visit. No.
Didn't go well.
Wasn't going to happen. Sean McDermott, not a great visit for Joe Mixon. Didn't necessarily know who the head coach was when he met him.
That's right. He didn't know who Sean was.
We talked about it a little bit. Yeah. That's a bad. That's just bad.
So Joe,
that one was not good.
What did he say? Like, what do you do here, or who are you?
Basically, like, just, and you are like, yeah. I got to get the actual details how he asked that, but yes, that was the gist of the story.
He's probably not going to get drafted.
That's a good one. Like a good first impression. Oh, I can tell you a bad first impression.
Let's hear it.
Junior Gillette had a bad first impression. Defensive end from Stillman, who everybody at the Saints, I was the area scout who probably talked about this on the show, but he was one of my, we loved him, pass rusher, had a story to him, long background, left Temple on some issues. So we get him as an undrafted free agent. Perfect. First mini camp, he almost takes out Chase Daniel's knee. Now, when I first told this story, I think I said it was Drew Brees, but it was not. It was Chase Daniel. I want to make sure I tell it correctly because that's where the story goes to Greg Williams. Because Greg Williams explained when that play happened, when they were watching the tape the next day, to Junior Gillette, that if you ever do that to Drew Brees, I will have an apple and a roadmap for you. An apple to keep you fed and a roadmap to find your way home. And everybody else agreed in the defensive room.
God dang, we got to get Greg on the show.
Yeah, he may or may not remember it, but I can remember it so vividly that he may. Because for Greg Williams, that may happen daily, where he is telling a defensive end, do not touch the quarterback. Starting quarterback.
So many favorite interviews for Blood and Guts, but that one is up there. Just chat with Greg Williams about, the level of quote unquote nuts that a slot corner needs to tackle a tight end. So, all right, let's kind of go that direction then in terms of red flags. And
Jalen Carter,
every GM, every scout. I mean, if you're a scout, you're basically, a private investigator trying to figure out the level of character any prospect has. I mean, you're probably talking to teammates, to coaches, to professors, to people on campus. You're doing everything you can to get the truth,
everything,
and see how somebody's wired, because the game is so mental. Like you said, last week, everybody's talented at this level. So much of it is mental. And
it separates you.
I mean, there's so much pressure in this game where, your livelihood is literally at stake every practice, every game. There's somebody always there to take your job. How does that weigh on somebody? Sammy Watkins was so open about all of that and how much it weighed on him when it looks like he's a bust and he's suffering all these injuries. So there's so much that goes into it. But we want to get into Jalen Carter here in a minute, because that's obviously the topic of conversation now. And this is somebody, when Chicago had the first pick, you're wondering if he's going to be the first overall pick. Then you got Drew Rosenhaus, his agent, saying, no interviews with anybody outside of the top 10, which, real quick story. I got to pull up Bob's report on Jalen Carter. So obviously Jalen Carter had his off the field issue that we all kind of know by now. And let me make sure I get the right file up here.
He just has because he has endless content.
So this would have been a week before the combine.
Seriously.
Police in Athens, Georgia booked Carter on misdemeanor charges of reckless driving and racing after an incident in January. This is from Bob's initial top 55 a month ago at golongtd.com. And forgot to mention at the top, everybody subscribe. His 39th annual draft series starts
39
Wednesday morning. So right when you're listening to this, probably, it's unbelievable. He'll have just a ton of intel on all prospects. But this is also what Bob wrote earlier. Carter initially misled police, who later concluded that he was racing his car at speeds of over 100 miles an hour before the car he was attempting to outdistance crashed, killing a Georgia staffer and one of his teammates. 2 others were injured. Also in September, he was ticketed for driving 89 miles per hour in a 45-mile-per-hour zone. That is very fast. And we'll get into Bob's report and what the scouts had to say about Jalen Carter. But when that news broke, Jim, I never mentioned this to you. So I'm in Indianapolis at the Combine.
That's right, you were there.
And I was waiting to meet with an agent for a prospect for a project I'm kind of working on down the road. And as I was waiting for him, I see Drew Rosenhaus in the lobby of this hotel, like pacing on the phone, which anybody who has seen Drew Rosenhaus anywhere, like you assume that's what he's doing.
That's
right
out
like
of the
his
cliche movie.
Right, that's his natural state. It's this.
It's how it's.
I'll say there was a little more.
I do respect and like him.
Oh, he fights for his clients. And
I really respect.
Yeah, him. For what his job is, he's as good as it gets because he's going to do everything in his power to help you get as much money as you possibly can get. But this was different. This was a sense of urgency, semi-panic, what is happening? Like this was different. His brother Jason works with him as well, and they're kind of there's a situation at hand, and then they were talking to somebody who I don't know may or may not have been a family member. I'm not sure in the lobby, and then it was literally like 4 seconds later, it
like you saw it broke.
Combusts on Twitter, right. And everybody knows what I just read there. So there's all of that with Jalen Carter, but there's also this. So here's from Bob McGinn's initial top 55. It's not pretty. So four personnel men said Carter was a far better prospect than former teammate Devontae Wyatt. Doesn't play hard like Wyatt. That dude gave us all. Carter's motor runs hot and cold. He's disruptive but not overly productive. He's a worrier for me. A lot of these Georgia dudes aren't as good individually as they were as a whole. This is a third scout. Best player in the draft, but he's lazy. They put him on the treadmill damn near every day. He doesn't love football, doesn't love the weight room, horrible family background, not a leader. He's phenomenally talented. He's going to run like a deer. He's the epitome of star or bust. So this is a fourth scout. He's one of the rare players down through the years that just totally dominated. He doesn't have big-time stats because he only played half the time. He can rush the passer. He's strong. He takes on two blockers and just tosses them aside. So that's about as boomer bust as it gets when you say somebody that doesn't love football versus he can just take over a game. As you were an area scout, you were director of personnel with the Bills. How do you navigate the Jalen Carter conundrum?
They'll do. So those are Bob's what he's getting. So those
these are the scouts,
right? These are the scouts.
Relationships. These aren't scouts.
So that's the trigger. That's a trigger word. Doesn't love football. Treadmill. That means weight issues. That is you really should just move on. It's tempting. Okay, right? Because the size, speed, you're going to see all the workouts. You have to move on. Let somebody, I'll say it again, like Anthony Richardson, let somebody else be the hero. I would let somebody else be the hero on Carter as well.
Yep.
Tyler, I keep saying it. You can't do it. It's a luxury. I guess it would be a luxury pick for a team. I just don't see how you could value that. A top 10 pick, you have to love football. You have to be productive. You have to have done something and be ready to play right away. So that's a hard no, like an easy hard no almost, especially a defensive tackle. And especially if I hear teams are trading up for players, and we could talk about trading up for players. That's a whole other thing. But you can't trade up for a guy that doesn't love football. That's a no. I mean, you don't even think about that. And I'm done with trading up anyway. If it's not for a quarterback you're going after, I don't think I would. I don't know.
That's always the red flag. Is there's going to be some players who have red flags and get into stuff off the field, and you've got to kind of use your own moral compass as a team.
No question.
I think where we are with like marijuana possession is different now than it was a decade ago when we were talking about Janoris Jenkins.
Like we were saying,
yeah,
I love that.
Yeah,
I love the revisits.
So I mean, something like that versus
his stuff is immaturity though.
Immaturity. It's 40 miles over the speed limit.
It's reckless. Yeah.
Somebody died, obviously.
It's tough.
So that coupled with the is he going to now? You could also go back in time and think, were people saying the same stuff about Warren Sapp? Some of the all-time greats, were they? I don't know. I'd say no. I feel like some of these guys with red flags, they wouldn't say doesn't love football.
I was just.
That's probably the difference, right? Maybe some of these guys got into stuff off the field, but it wasn't a matter of are they obsessed with the sport.
Big difference. Obsessed. Everything. Love football. Love it. And that's we always then production equals tolerance. Yeah. The guys that love football produce. Warren Sapp, you're going to get away with some things. You can show up to practice how you want to show up. You can live how you want to live. Nobody can block you.
Now, I want to bring up a player that we're both familiar with in our own different worlds. You know, when I was covering the Bills at the Buffalo News, and you inherited him, he was drafted in 2011, and when you took over as director of personnel, Doug Whaley's right-hand man, he was one of your best players, and you were going to pay one of your best players, Marcel Darius. So maybe that's a comp for a Jalen Carter in terms of, I'm not talking the off-field stuff, but in terms of unbelievably talented,
the love of football,
a large human being who throws other large human beings around like a rag doll, kind of ran hot and cold, right?
There are so many factors for Marcel, so many factors.
There are. And so the world that I know him from is just the feature story I did at the Buffalo News, where basically everybody who's close to him has died. He had nobody.
He shouldn't have made it. He shouldn't have made it.
He shouldn't have come close to the NFL.
There you go.
It's insane what he's been through. One after another. I mean, literally, when I wrote the story, like before the next offseason even began, he lost like another mentor.
Trust issue. It's just endless for him. And being around him, honestly, it's one of those things where you could just see it like, wow, it's almost out of his control at this point. Like it's tough. He really had a tough support system, like lack of almost, for so many reasons. So to see a talent like that, Marcel, I'm going to say they would disagree. Eric would disagree. His off seasons weren't good enough to max out who I consider. I don't know if I've ever seen anybody more talented, that size and speed.
Is that right?
No.
I mean, you've been around this.
No, I'm feeling pretty strong saying that. That side, that for that position, Aaron Donald was so small. Marcel was 350 pounds.
And he could move.
Now, in college, coming out, he was 330 when he was testing at 485 or whatever he ran at 330 pounds. It was like nothing. His change of directions, and we used to rewind it all the time, watch it, in meetings.
Yeah.
When we'd be like, ooh, look at, that's when you're just lucky to be.
I'm guessing you weren't doing that after the Kansas City game in 2015 when Rex had him dropping into coverage. You probably weren't rewinding that one.
Those questions. Terry Pagula was asking this question. But bottom line with him, yes, he would probably tell you the same, that he didn't max out his ability. Man, it was tough. He had a tough battle.
So 2014 was a career year for him, right? I mean, the whole D-line. I mean, Mario Williams, Kyle Williams, Marcel Darius.
It's funny. When you revisit that
win 9 games with Kyle Orton. There's a lot going right on that roster. So Rex Ryan comes in. We've talked about it a million times, obviously, but the change in the scheme, it's not necessarily point A to point B, just go. It's more thinking. It's confusion. It's trying to create havoc with all these moving pieces to the point where there's substitutions on and off the field, like right before the snap. It was a disaster with really good talent. So that kind of zapped Marcel's game, like it zapped a lot of people's games on that defense. But also it was right when I can still remember being in Detroit at your exhibition game, talking to Marcel, and he says he bashed you guys. He said they're treating me like I'm a dime a dozen. And he was pissed that he wasn't getting his contract. I wrote the story. It kind of went viral here in Buffalo. He got his contract. I would imagine it's something Terry wanted. I mean, Terry, he really looked after him too, right?
People will never know how much, when I was with the Bills, the Pagulas, how much they cared about players and reached out to the players, had open phone, open door policy with those guys. I mean, They really were accessible and helpful. And yeah, so the relationship was good there. Yeah, the Marcel thing was pretty obvious. Yeah. I mean, it was.
That's the thing.
It was a gamble.
It's what you're getting.
You know what you're doing.
There wasn't I'm sure that there was some skepticism, some criticism. To me, it was a no-brainer, though. This is like your best. This is your best player, your most talented player.
No question.
You pay
and he was producing. He was dominating.
He was producing. He's come out of that career.
He was dominating.
What I'm saying is like that combined with the scheme and all the chaos was kind of central to things careening the wrong direction.
He loses another defensive coordinator. He loses another defensive line coach. You know, it's like he's been through a lot of coaches.
Yeah.
You know, then that's how it starts it's that whole nobody's stable in his life. It's tough. And then is it a fit with Rex? Blah, blah, blah. But what a talent. And I think now we talk through that, they don't sound similar.
Yeah.
Carter and Marcel. Like size-wise and moving.
You're right. We're kind of talking our way through this.
I like that. Now that we said that, no, I would – Marcel did dominate in the NFL and did dominate in college. And I do think he loved football. I don't think he loved what it took to max out your ability.
Totally.
The effort, the mental, the film, the workouts, the immerse yourself. Because he's like, why? I'm showing up. Nobody can block me anyway.
Yeah.
At some point it catches up with you. But, you can see his side to it.
Football was an escape for him. When you're losing – all of these loved ones, and it's traumatic, and you're wondering why and how and questioning your own existence. No. I mean, it is for so many guys, but Marcel Darius especially, it provided a sanctuary. So I think that you're right. That's an important distinction. I don't know Jalen Carter myself personally, but if this is the knock on him, if this is the red flag, and Bob's going to have a lot more on this week, man. That's a scary, scary draft pick in the top 5, let alone the top 10.
I can almost think about this right now, just based on everything we heard about Carter and what we know about Marcel. I feel good knowing Buddy Nix and Tom Modrak, who are running those drafts for Buffalo that took Marcel, they wouldn't take Carter with that resume. Those guys don't take guys that don't love football with the second pick of the draft. That would be my guess on that.
If you could filibuster for me, Jim,
yes.
I'm going to find Bob McGinn's. I want to see what the scout said about Marcel.
See, because to me, I scouted Marcel, and I will think about this. I'm going back. The love of football, I don't feel like was questioned. I think it was just the work ethic, the weight gains, the fluctuation. The weight. Is he going to gain weight? How much does he care about? How hard does he live off the field? It was tough you wouldn't get a lot of bad things back then in Alabama. It's different now. Did you find stuff?
It's loading.
Okay. I thought you wanted to stop.
It
so I was thinking, but it wasn't there. It was just that, if I can remember my stuff, but it was just that Marcel wasn't the all in shape program guy, just that rare talent.
Yeah.
Rare talent.
It's,
that's all I can remember as far as I'm not going to just gloss over the off the field, the family background, the hard life. I mean, that was known too.
This is why
hard support system.
You've got to investigate and you can't be paranoid because you do need some bad eggs. Like you do need some players with a hard edge who have some shit to them that. I mean, look, you get in the playoffs and you're playing San Francisco. It's a nasty, violent game, until you just completely eliminate blocking and tackling. As George Kittle said, this game is about violently moving the ball one direction. However you can do it.
You got to love it.
So you're not going to do that with a bunch of choir boys.
No,
you're going to do it to some people who have a rap sheet, and you've got to figure out.
It doesn't have to. It's there's different ways. There's different ways to love football and be tough. Coming from different backgrounds, you can have an Eric Wood background.
Yeah.
Okay. Like good, good family support, goes, does everything the right way. Eric Wood loves football, incredibly tough, maxed out.
Right. Causation is not correlation. There's going to be some guys who had good
guys
family lives.
Guys that have
never
family, love football.
Never got the attention in middle school.
Right.
Who want to kick somebody's ass. I get that.
They love football. They're tough. It's like, it's crazy. It's just the backgrounds are crazy, to your point. How you get a locker room, all that. Everything you said was right. It's just you found it.
Oh, man. This is great. So this is, as I said, Bob McGinn, 39th annual draft series, golongtd.com, dropping today, Wednesday, as you're listening, or if you're on the live stream tomorrow. So this is from 2011. So this would have been the 27th draft series. Marcel Darius was Bob McGinn's number 1 rated defensive tackle, obviously. Yep. Ahead of Nick Farrelly.
Yeah, Farrelly was about that. Farrelly was a special athlete too.
6'3", 319. So I'll just read what Bob said. We'll talk about it. Third-year junior from Huffman, Alabama. Quote, he's a combination of playmaking ability, athleticism, and explosiveness, Atlanta GM Thomas Dimitrov said. He's a top 5 pick that will impact the team greatly from day one. Back to Bob here. His father, a Haitian immigrant, passed away when Darius was 6. He's a big wrecking ball inside, said Dominic. Also, this is back to Mark Dominic. So this is what's great. Like GMs were on the record talking about this stuff. There's a little more paranoia now. Like, why? There shouldn't be. Like, just talk. Let's just talk about these guys. Quote, one of the big bodies that knows how to get to the quarterback. He should be another one of those big dominating D tackles, kind of like John Henderson, Marcus Stroud, Albert Haynesworth. Played up and down the line for Coach Nick Saban. Quote, he's the best 5 technique, the best 3 technique, and the best nose tackle, one scout said. Now, you don't want him doing your taxes, but he's a hell of a football player, end quote. Started just 15 of 33 games, waiting his turn, as is generally the case at Alabama. Finished with 70 tackles, 20 for loss, 11 sacks, and 1 quote-unquote big play. He's a power player, said Bill Polian. Think Richard Seymour. Drafting Richard Seymour. We got to pay Richard Seymour. When matched against Florida center Mike Pouncey, Darius, quote, kicked his ass all day long, observed one scout. Added an AFC scout, he's the safest and best player in the draft. Oh. So a little different than Jalen Carter's rundown, right? I mean, it was an imperfect comparison all along.
Right. So that's good. I mean, that's good to remember. At least my memory didn't go crazy on me. That's cool. I like how you can pull that up, though.
Yeah. Credit to the Journal-Sentinel for archiving stuff. It's good to be able to find that. I think that's it. I mean, to me, hearing that somebody doesn't love football, that's worse than a lot of stuff that you can get into off the field. It really is.
Yeah, you almost have to think about moving on from a player. You could almost start it. If you could start, a scout could say, hey, before we get into this too much, this guy doesn't like football. Like, the coach could say, hey, let's keep moving.
Which is way more common than people think.
Well, that would happen in a draft. I mean, that would be, like, maybe not for a first round type grade, but there could be a guy we're in the 4th or 5th round now, when we're in our draft meetings. And you could say that to, hey, before we get into this guy, I'll start with, he doesn't love football. He had this happen. The coaches don't say, thank you. Let's keep it moving. Yep. No, duly noted. Hey, it's in here. Thank you. Let's keep it moving.
Because there's
without reading him as a player, without getting into all the minutia, all the
different degrees of love too. I'm sure if Eddie Lacy was sitting right here by us, he'd say that he loved football.
That's same with Marcel.
I'm saying with an Eddie Lacy, if he genuinely loved it, he wouldn't have let himself go physically like he did.
Thing.
He was one of the best running backs in the league instantly.
Agreed.
And it lasted 2.5 years.
Yeah.
That's kind of why I love the A.J. Dillon pick. I mean, when we talked shortly after he was drafted, he struck me as somebody who is going to be in that weight room, doing everything in his power to remain this battering ram, right? You've got to love it, all 12 months of the year, not just Sundays.
Professional. It's the word professional.
Yeah. All right, before we wrap up, we do have some comments, which is great, on the YouTube live stream here. So thanks, everyone, for chiming in. John Wayne, he asks, thoughts on Lucas Van Ness, Iowa? True first rounder or a sign of a weak draft class? So we haven't been grinding the film. I'll trust Bob and his legion of scouts on this one. But, I mean, from what I've seen, what I've read, I mean, it seems like a good, safe, high motor, right? Somebody from Iowa, you got to say high motor, workman-like, lunch pail kind of guy.
Safe high motor.
I don't know. I don't want to talk out of ass on this one. So I can't. It seems like it'd be a good pick.
Don't know who it is.
But it does seem like there's not a lot of just bona fide game wreckers at that position in this draft versus previous years. Like last year, you had Kayvon Thibodeau, Trayvon Walker.
But then that sets his value, so it just pushes it up, pushes him up.
I think that's what he's pointing out. Yep,
it happens.
Colin, Met fan man. I'm guessing this is Colin. He says, I got to sign off. I'm going to watch the replay. Have a great day. But P.S., a pet peeve to add to the list. So we do have to get back into the habit of noting the things that tick us off here. Not getting a thank you after holding the door for someone. I'm very, very glad that this was brought up. I'll let you go first.
That's a good one. No, but we talked about it briefly, not on the pod, but you brought it to the attention on the airplane about people giving the elbow if they're trying to get out before you. I have a problem with people getting on the airplane and aren't ready to, when they get to their row, to get their bag up and get in. You got to get your bag up and get in. It's not that hard to be prepared. You can't put your bag up and then open it to take out whatever it is you're trying to get out. That's got to be done beforehand. It causes a major traffic jam boarding a plane. When I think that can be avoided, I think that's simple. Not a major one, but certainly one that is not necessary. Just have a little courtesy. That's all.
And I'm totally with Colin on this one too. I mean, if there's
now the door thing,
if you're holding the door,
door is a whole thing. That's ridiculous.
If they don't say thank you,
that's almost
right. I think you shove them back through, and then you take the door and you treat it like a blocking sled. Training camp, 90 degrees down in New Orleans, and you two-hand shove the door into their face. I think that's the only way. I mean, we've mentioned this on the podcast, but if you're driving through the neighborhood and you wave to somebody, if they make eye contact with you, right, and they don't acknowledge you, if they're just kind of staring through,
lack of respect,
right, you're allowed to Grand Theft Auto that person and just run them over. I mean, if I was president, if it was my administration, I would make that legal.
Go back to the Greg Williams apple on a road map for that person.
Yes.
Here you go. You can't say thank you. Here's an apple. Roadmap, find your way home. I don't need to ever talk to you.
So you're not just driving them over?
No, I'm good on it. Just go. Don't ever need to see you again.
But under my administration, that's allowed, though. In fact, you'd be rewarded.
You cannot. You would get
the Medal of Honor.
You wouldn't get arrested.
Yeah. We need some more of that. One thing I wanted to ask you, because we both have, young kids. This just hit me. So we did the Bluey show at Shays, which was awesome.
Son's big
great
Bluey
show.
Fan. Big Bluey fan.
Ella, Sonny, loved it. Bluey's the one kid show that isn't just tolerable. It's actually pretty good. It's funny. The dad is hilarious. The dad makes you feel like not a good dad because he's such a great dad. He puts up with so much nonsense. It's funny. I like it. It's much better than Diana and Charlie's Colorform City, and Blippi will never make an appearance.
Bluey's good.
Bluey is solid. Bluey is solid. But the Wiggles was on. Sonny, he does like the Wiggles a little bit. He's 1.5. And it just struck me, Jim, like there's a really fine line between being a really good dad, a loving, caring dad, and just losing your goddamn mind. Because, like the Wiggles, I think growing up, you'd see it, you'd hear about it, you'd say, oh my God, that's so weird. Like who could ever watch that show? And then you start watching it and your kids enjoy it. And the next thing you know, you're like singing the songs at full volume, and you're dancing and you're shaking and you're moving and you're grooving and you're talking about the Wiggle House and Emma's Bows and all the jangles that are on there. And then you're wondering, okay, am I being a good dad? Or am I losing my mind here?
Being
this
a
is
good dad.
insane.
You do anything for you. It's good dad.
It's a line.
Good dad.
It's a line. Okay, good. That makes me feel better because we were jamming out.
Listen, I'm going to tell you, I don't care about construction trucks, ambulances, police cars, as far as like I don't really care about them until now. Like that's our life right now. That's what he's into. He's into all that. Yeah, and I'm into it too.
It's the best.
So yeah, you take him to a train, go to the fire station, take him to see a real fire truck. It's mind blowing. Like
a lot of hidden gems. You
Yeah.
the Explore more downtown.
yeah,
They bring they bring out the fire trucks and stuff.
all that. That's where he's at. Right. So I guess what I'm saying is I'm glad I'm not into the Wiggles thing, but
one.
I would be if he was into it. I'm with you, man. I'd be dancing and singing too.
Do you ever do the thing with Walter? Do you ever just unplug the TV and say, "Oh, it's not working. TV's not working today"?
Then just no.
Right.
No,
Sometimes you got to do it.
Why?
Good little trick. Don't do too much TV, right? There's a line there too.
That is true.
We got to get the gang together, man. We got to wreak some havoc. Let's do it. It's
I know
miserable and
we got
snowing
teased.
and
We got
cold
teased.
right
I don't even want to talk about what's going on.
Nobody wants to hear us talk about the weather.
No. You don't usually do that.
No, let's not do it. All right. Thanks everyone for watching on the live stream and listening wherever. However, golongtea.com.
Fatty.
Subscribe. Fatty
Restaurant week.
in Wednesday, 6:00, Orchard Park location.
First round.
Get on in. Jim will buy your beer.
First round.
We'll have a grand old time. Thanks, everyone.